So now
Okay.
we can switch on to talking the interview process, like the things which
Mhm.
happened during your interview of Honda R&D. But before that, we do you remember the number of students shortlisted for the interview in this profile?
For Honda R&D, what for the specific profile, I think for all the profiles in Honda R&D, there was a waitlist and the shortlist.
Yes.
In shortlist, I think there might have been somewhere around 5 to 7 people max. I don't remember exact numbers. I'm just approximating it from that sheet.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and there were some 10 people at least in the waitlist. That's how the trend was for all the profiles, more or
Okay.
less.
Okay. So for each of the profiles, like 5 to 7 in the main list and somewhat similar number in the wait list.
Yeah, waitlist.
Okay, fine. So and then finally, how many offers were made for this for your profile?
For my profile, I think 2 people.
Okay, two people.
Two
You know the
people.
other person? You know the other person?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for Honda R&D, I think they only took from 2 institutes.
Okay.
So overall, it was just 9 people from the country, I suppose.
Okay. 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 Yes. So in case of those two students for this profile, are both of them from electrical or?
Yeah, both are from electrical and both are from control and computing.
Okay, fine. Yes.
But again, it is not because we are from electrical or not from control and computing. There are a lot of other dynamics in this.
Obviously, obviously.
Okay.
Yes, Divakar. So now we can talk about your interview process, like and if you could walk us through in detail, like the number of rounds, the duration of round, and some typical questions, if you remember in that case, so we can talk about those things now.
Okay. Yeah, I will just try to say whatever I remember.
Yes.
Stuffs were like for Honda R&D, it was a pretty long interview because there was obviously it was virtual, so there was a lot of lag and there was a lot of waiting time, but it was very structured as in it's like you will enter, I mean, Honda R&D directly and how it is being proceeded. You will first enter into the reception, then they will ask your name and your ID. From there, they will shift you to some other room. From there, you will go to the first interview room, and
Oh,
then you will come back to that first room. That was happening always. So it's like, so it took quite some time, but this was the process. So initially, you will go into a reception. That's again virtual. The person sitting there will ask, check the credentials. Then they will send you to a room. You will wait there a bit. Then you will go for the first round to some other room. Rooms as in different rooms in the conference.
yeah.
And from there, you will again come back to this room. And again, this is happening for 3 times till the whole process is done. If you are going through the complete process. And yeah, 3 rounds of interview. It was somewhere around. I think each round was somewhere around 30 to 45 minutes, I suppose. Because yeah, it's not like, see, unlike many interviews, um, it was mostly discussion based. It was like the way you Sudhakar and I am talking now. Like they will ask some things and we will give our viewpoints on that. So they will say how they feel about it. It's kind of discussion. It's not like they will ask you, okay, this is happening, solve this puzzle, or what is underfitting, overfitting. It can happen, they can ask you a question. It's not like they will not, but my interview was mostly discussion based. And also beforehand we were asked to prepare a slide deck on 2 slide decks, basically ppts. One was a proposal for mobility solutions for a fulfilled life during COVID-19, and the other one was on culture adaptation to Japan, how we as a person will adapt to Japanese culture and lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, and we also, I mean, at least I also kept a separate slide deck on my works handy, because if I had a chance, I thought I would talk about it. I don't know what would have happened, so I had it ready, and I would suggest everybody to have it ready if you, especially you are sitting for such companies where they prioritize your work enough. Okay. Most of the time what happens is you do get chance. If you get a chance, it's better to explain what work you have done. And yeah, all these stuff happened as a preparation for interview. And Yeah, unlike typical interviews, it was very chill. It was like in discussion mode. It's initially I presented these slide decks. They asked first interview asked me about the ideas which I mentioned in that slide deck. About it was something called emote, some emotional intelligence assistant kind of work. So we discussed a bit on that. Then he just asked what if I'm a vegetarian and non-vegetarian. In that, it was very chill kind of conversation. They were just getting to know us, along with the technical part happening parallelly. Technical as in discussions. There was no direct questions as such. And then most of the technique. This was the first round where it was mostly presentation based and just getting to know the person kind of approach. In the second round, what happened was like it was more towards, I would say, technical, because that person, I think he was the team lead, and that person focused mostly on the works I have done from resume. He based his discussion mostly out of the master's thesis topic, which he found interesting. And so I explained what my master thesis is all about, how I'm doing it, how it is done till now, what is different, what I would like to do, why I am so interested in this, why it is relevant, all such sort of things. So again, as I told you before, when you are obsessed with your work and when you drive your own work, you'll have a lot of things to talk about it. So I just poured out everything which I wanted to. So they were happy because you are excited, and that excitement shows how excited you are for the work which you are supposed to, for which you are giving the interview. And then after all this discussion over the master's thesis and other project works, he was pretty curious, and he asked me how I would use these works which I have done and how I would extend it to autonomous driving. So I had to be like a bit more creative and come up with something so that all the works which I have done, which had nothing to do directly with autonomous driving, but still I have to extend all these works, preferably clubbed together into some application for some software for autonomous driving. So yeah, that was something I would appreciate if everybody does, because before you approach or before you give the interview, it will be always good if you to think how you will know beforehand what works are happening in the company, obviously. So it's always good to associate your work and what work is happening in the company, so that you will be, these kind of questions do happen, how you will how this is relevant to their field. For me, how my master's thesis or whatever works I have done would be relevant for autonomous driving. So I clubbed all my works together and came with a combined work so that it would benefit autonomous driving. Then more or less, and again, he also that person also was pretty much interested about that slide deck on the proposal on fulfilled life during COVID-19. They want some kind of proposal for a robot. So there was a discussion on that and on Japanese, how we will adapt to Japan. That is for Japanese companies, that is something they will always look forward to.
Yes.
Even though everybody may not ask for the PPT, it was specific for Honda. They will always look forward if you will be able to adapt to Japanese culture, Japanese language and all. I don't know if it will work out for everybody, but what I would say is like, basically, I think all Indians are multilingual. I don't think there might be any person who only speaks one language and he doesn't know anything else. Mostly every Indian is multilingual, and I use that to my advantage. You can always put that through. Like, I know this language. It's so picking up languages. If it is Japanese, I'm talking about Japanese companies. So picking up a language is not an issue for me. So that is a plus point which you can always show. And for my specific case, I used animes as something which I would relate to. Yeah, so it was mostly like conversation, so it was easy for me to talk all these stuffs. And they were also interested about the anime stuff and all. So that was the second round, and third round also was basically in the same direction. As such, I think unlike other interviews, you can only say these rounds were there, but it's hard to classify if it is HR or technical because it's a conversation mode. They ask technical stuff and then they directly jump into vegetarian or non-vegetarian. Then they directly jump into how we will adapt to Japan. Then they again will go to autonomous driving and how your work is relevant to them in that way. So yeah, it's a mix. Just be free and talk to them, and especially for Japanese companies, be free and talk to them and ensure you make a good impression of yourself with your projects, not just as a person, not just talking anything which comes to your mind, but always trying to associate your work and whatever is happening in the company. And also one pointer is like, I had read about Honda before. Obviously, I was interested because it's Honda Research and Development. And I read about it, and there was a new release of, I think, in Japan, they have developed, they got a permission for releasing new vehicles, which would be kind of driver assistance in highways, where they can transfer the control to the vehicle when they are moving in highways. So it was sanctioned very recently, just I think a couple of weeks before the interview. So I had known about it, and I put that into the interview, and that helped. That might have helped a bit because that person who was taking the interview was related to the project, so he was interested. Yeah, I know about it, and then we discussed over it a bit. And yeah, that you see basically what happens in interviews. If it is not too technical and if other person is not too rigid, you will know the dynamics. And if you are able to, it's always good to steer your interview in a way you feel comfortable.
Yes.
So you can do that. May not be always, but if you have the chance, it's always good to take the initiative and steer it to the direction which you like. Right. So mostly interview was mostly about this, and I was a bit concerned when that person asked if I'm a vegetarian or non-vegetarian because Japan is famous for sushi and non-veg foods. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'm a vegetarian basically. So I thought they will feel a bit hesitant because they might feel I won't be able to adapt to Japan because I'm a vegetarian. So I thought that might be a problem, but no, it was just a random question and it didn't have any issue at all. So if anybody have that kind of concern, I don't think so. It doesn't matter much. It's just your work, how you talk to them, and how excited you are about the work happening in the company.
Yes, means these things really, like you mentioned, this non-vegetarian vegetarian thing, and so these things really sometimes people like they are not sure like how should I answer and what should I answer actually. Sometimes they feel scared about that if they get to know about that I am vegetarian, they might reject me out. But your experience will, means make them aware of these things, that these things do not play a much role, and we have to be truthful.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Divakar. Divakar, so of course, you have elaborated your interview rounds in great detail, and I think people will get an idea about the rounds. So we can talk, a bit about all these things. Like since you have a very good resume and you also have a publication, so at any point of time, did they ask you that why don't you want to go for a PhD then?
Luckily, they didn't ask anything about my plans for PhD and all.
Yeah.
But publication, even specifically for Honda, they didn't talk anything about the publication. They just talked about the works I have done. And maybe it might have played a role during the resume shortlisting, maybe. But again, I'm telling you, there are people who got shortlisted or who got selected into Honda even without any publication. So that is not something mandatory. So don't be too concerned about it. But if you have something, I would say the best thing about having at least to see the publication which you're talking about, which I had in my resume during the placement was not yet published. It was still under review.
Yes.
So I was just telling I have the capacity to do all this work. It is under review. Yes. One good thing about having such works under you is like you have a lot of stuff to talk about, which you don't want, which you see when I talk about somebody else's work, I'll be hesitant because I'm not sure. I don't know the inside out of that work. But when you're talking about your own work, you are the only person who knows the inside out of the work. Obviously, the basic stuff or the generic stuff which everybody knows, that can be questioned, but still how you implemented it, and how the results which you got, that is a result of your own hard work, and you can talk a lot about it, the issues you faced, the results which you have now, how it matters. All this stuff is very personal to you, and you can talk a lot about it, as you can see now what I'm doing. So that is the good thing about having good projects. And having publications is always a plus, but I don't think it is mandatory. Having publication is a plus. Try to have publications, because that will drive you to do works. If it get published or not published, at least you will have good works with you to show.
Yes. Yeah, very true. Yes, Divakar. So, in the interview rounds, of course, you have talked about like there were 3 rounds, and the first round was, they were listening to you, like the idea which they had given, the slides which you had prepared actually. Then in the second round, they were asking questions on your projects, which you have mentioned in your resume. And the third round was about, I forgot, the third round was mainly about?
It was, there was an HR talking to me. So that's why I told you, you can't say specifically as technical round, HR round and all. It's basically conversation. Okay. So the team lead, the HR, all these people will talk to you, and there were 3 separate interviews happening. That's the best way to describe it. So they will converse, they will just talk to you, they will just discuss about your works, about your plans, about their works, about their plans. I mean, even how weather or Corona is creating a ruckus. Okay. It's random discussion, but you can always steer it to what you want to do.
Yes.
Right? And they gauge you every time they talk to you. So it's always good to put out the best and excited part of you in front of them. Yes. And you will do that when you have good project and when you're excited genuinely. It will happen. I'm not asking others to do it deliberately. What I'm asking them, or what I'm asking everybody who is saying this, is to pursue something which you love so much and which you can be obsessed about, so that ultimately you end up being what a good researcher should be.
Yes. Yeah, we all should find your passion. Like you have mentioned, that find something that you can be obsessed with. So, and then keep working in that direction, so that you have a lot of things to talk about those areas, and that way you can become a very good researcher. Yes, Divakar. Divakar, so in all of in any of these 3 rounds, means were there any tricky questions, like where you felt that, okay, I did not study these things, or maybe I am having some difficulty in answering those questions, something like that?
I never faced any of typical technical questions in these 3 rounds. They didn't ask me about CNN, or they didn't ask me about any of the basic fundamentals of machine learning or deep learning. I don't know why, but it was, I think, because mostly it was evident that I have done all this work. So they were more curious towards the works which I have done. It was pretty new. It was something like there was some work somebody else did and I just implemented it. It was not that kind of work. It was pretty interesting. So mostly it was on MTech thesis part, but it was the tricky questions which I would say was like, when they asked me if I'm a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, I was like, I'm a vegetarian, but I like Fanta so much. So what should I do? See, it was, obviously you should say what you are. Don't pretend. I forgot to tell you that. Never pretend. It will not work in your direction. Yes. Okay. So I said I'm a vegetarian, but then after that round was over, I was like, should I said I'm a non-vegetarian? Or he asked me multiple times. That was the thing which stayed with me. He asked me multiple times, are you a vegetarian? Like, are you a pure vegetarian? He asked me that multiple times. So I was, okay, where is this going? That was the only tricky question which I faced max. Baki pura, it was on my MTech thesis. That was the technical side. So it was discussion. They didn't ask me, they asked me what my MTech thesis is. What is it about? How I did it? How it is relevant? In that direction. So they didn't ask what kind of network I used, how many layers does that network have, how was the syntax of for a class or something of such sort. No such questions were asked. But I have heard that that could have happened. So it's always better to be prepared. Yeah. Okay. So again, whatever I've heard, I would share it here. It's like, again, as I told you before for the tests, prepare on basic fundamentals of machine learning and deep learning. Yeah. Like, again, underfitting, overfitting, all these stuff, even if it sounds so trivial, they come in handy when you implement algorithms. gauging how your network is performing, if is it underfitting or overfitting from graphs, from loss or accuracy graphs. All those kind of stuff matters when you implement. And if you are sure about your basics, I think the questions from ML or deep learning won't be much of an issue. But I didn't face much. The only tricky part was
Yes.
veg or non-veg.
Yeah.
But don't pretend. Never pretend to the interviewers, because it doesn't sound good philosophically also, and it won't end up being a good thing to do.
Yes. Yes, Diwakar. Diwakar, and any question on your POR, like position of responsibility in your interview?
No, there was no question over POR. I'm not sure, but as far as I have seen from my peers and all, I don't think PORs matter too much for research profiles or for core profiles. But if you have good PORs, obviously it will be plus. I didn't have any, personally speaking, for my masters, I didn't have the typical PORs, but I made it clear through my resume that I had my hand full with all these works. Plus, also I did some kind of, you can't call it freelance works. I was experimenting with web designing and all those stuff. So yeah, I had other works than other than my research work happening in the lab. So there was no specific POR and no questions were asked from it. And personally, I don't think PORs are mandatory, or it might boost your resume for research or core profiles.
Yes. Yes, Diwakar. Yeah, so I guess then we have talked, pretty much everything about your interview, and of course you have also discussed everything in great detail. So one since you have mentioned that your course projects, they were talking, they were very interested about your course projects. So I guess really your projects were really aligned with the work which Honda R&D is doing. So that way they could have they found a very good match in you, and they hired you finally. So the point which I am going to ask is like the some key points of your resume which you personally believe that might have played an important role in your selection. Some key points or some of your talk about.
From the discussion till now, I think whoever is listening to this can answer your question. The key points, I have multiple times iterated it. It's like MTech thesis and other research works occupied 80% of my discussion with the interviewers. I gave 2 interviews, I mean, for 2 different companies. For all those, 80% of the stuff they asked were from the MTech thesis and other research projects. Okay. So my key point, I would say, is like I had enough works to talk about. And it was pretty interesting because it was not typical works which people find. Even though they may understand what is co-segmentation or what is lifelong learning, but lifelong learning in visual recognition, obviously everybody will have some question what it is.
Yeah.
From there, you can build up all of the stuff which you have done on that specific work. So yeah, that MTech thesis and the research works were the key points which I would say. And again, as I said before, if you have good research projects published or not published, it will give you an ability to discuss about the work and your field with maximum confidence. And also during that process of having good projects done, reading papers and coding, there will be a lot of skills which you will pick up. And you may not do that. You may not pick up all these skills if you try to do it explicitly. Like one day you decide, I'm going to learn Python from this book. Many of the people know it won't happen it that way.
Yeah.
And someday you decide, from today I will read 1 paper a day. I'm not sure how many people will be able to do that.
Yes.
Right. So it's like when you are pursuing a specific project, you will read a lot, you will try to acquire a lot of skills. You will understand this. Sometimes you might feel Bash will help you to get certain other things done. So you will learn a bit of Bash maybe. So according to your requirement, you will develop skills and you'll gain more knowledge. And finally, see what will happen is like when you pursue it this way, placements and all other stuff will come as a byproduct.
Yeah.
When you prioritize placements, what will happen is it might get a bit hard. You might get a bit tensed. You may not be sure about yourself. If it's happening as a byproduct of your work, that's the best case scenario, as I would say.
Yes. Yes, Diwakar. Divakar, just out of curiosity, you have mentioned that your MTech thesis is on lifelong learning in visual recognition. So, if you could tell us, in layman language, what does it mean in layman language, so that people could also
Okay,
interesting, like, yeah.
I would try my best to say it in layman language. In deep learning, first what happens is like, say we have to classify, we are doing image classification, assume. We have 10 kind of images. We have images of dogs, images of cats, images of plants, trees, houses. In that way, we have 10 kind of images. We will call it classes, okay? 10 classes of images.
Yeah.
And we want a model A to learn to classify all these images. That is the objective, okay? So what in typically deep learning, what we will do is like, we will have all, say, we will have a collection of all these images, maybe 100 images of cats, 100 images of dogs, 100 images of houses. We'll have collection of all the images, the complete data set, or all the images will be there with you to train this model or to make this model A to learn what you want to do. That is to classify each of these images to their specific classes.
Yeah.
I hope that's straight. Now, but we humans never learn it that way, right? When we enter first standard or any standard, as a matter of fact, we don't learn addition, subtraction, integration, differentiation, or the complete calculus. Then we don't learn linear algebra. We don't do that as a chunk. We build on previous knowledge.
Yes.
Right? We build on previous knowledge and we gain knowledge continually. We keep on learning throughout our life. Even if it sounds so trivial for humans, that is not the case for deep learning models. They can't do that.
Yes.
So it's very hard. So if you want a model to learn, you will have to feed all the data which that model is supposed to learn. You can't have it on the go. So what I'm trying to do, or what people working in lifelong learning or visual continual learning are trying to do, is like how we can teach a model in this sequential manner. That is what the work is about. Like initially, we will teach the model to classify dogs and cats. Then whenever we have enough data of houses and trees, we will teach the model to classify houses and trees also, so that finally it can classify dog, cat, house, and tree. So in gradual fashion, we will learn to classify a lot of images. Rather than asking the model to classify or teaching the model directly to classify 1,000 classes, we will teach them 10 first, then next 10, then next 10. In that way, we'll gradually learn. That is the basic idea.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It sounds exciting. We can talk about it, but obviously, we can talk about it in some other session, maybe, where we can talk about your research experience. But for now, I guess we have covered your placement experience and your journey of getting placed in Honda R&D as an AI engineer. So your experience will definitely help a lot of people, not only in IIT Bombay, I think across the country, those who will be appearing for placements in the upcoming season. Like you have talked about, very basic things as well. So those things I think everyone should keep in mind while appearing for any interview or placements for that matter. So yeah. So anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I want to add one more thing. It's like, see, generic advice which I want to give is like, mostly don't prioritize. See, this is my personal advice. Some people might see it not okay. Don't prioritize your placements over other works which you have to do during masters. As I told you, try to get placement as a byproduct. Try to see placement as institute placement as one of the many possibilities which you can choose from. Okay. Everybody may not be able to do that, but try to build your profile or try to have projects so that at least you have a choice and you are not too tensed about placements. Because frankly, I am pretty damn sure that there are a lot of other people who are way more capable than me and who may fit way more better than me in this profile. But luck factor plays a huge role in placements. Keep that in mind. So don't stress too much about these placements. Think it as one of the possibilities which you can pursue, and always get obsessed with some work so that you will keep on trying and get better at it, at least max level which you can, so that other stuff, PhDs or placements or anything will happen as a byproduct of the work or hard work which you have put through. That's it.
Yes, Divakar. I think these advice will help, upcoming MTech students, or maybe, those the students who are planning to pursue MTech from any IIT. They could also understand this fact that you should not come to IIT just for the sake of placements. You should come here to explore the wide range of possibilities and your passion for. Yes. So yes, Divakar. So yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you for explaining your experience in great detail, and I was really amazed with the way in which you have walked towards your journey. In fact, and everything is very streamlined in your case. So I am really inspired by your profile, and thank you very much for taking your time for recording your experience.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for listening to me, and I'm bearing with me.
Yes. Thank you.